Without objection, the Chair is authorized to declare a recess of the committee at any point pursuant to Committee Rule 4. The Chair announces that the Chair may postpone further proceedings on any vote relating to any matter under consideration during today's markup. Pursuant to notice, we meet today to mark up 14 measures. Without objection, all members may have 5 days to submit statements or extraneous materials on today's business. As members were notified yesterday, we intend to first consider 12 bipartisan measures en bloc. Then we will move on to consider the ANS to H.R. 1004 and finish with consideration of H.R. 9. So let's proceed to the en bloc. The measures are H.R. 2002, the Taiwan Assurance Act of 2019, H.R.S. 273, reaffirming the United States' commitment to Taiwan and to the implementation of the Taiwan Relations Act, H.R. 97, Rescuing Animals with Rewards Act, RAWR, H.R. 753, Global Electoral Exchange Act of 2019, H.R. 1704, Championing American Business Through Diplomacy Act of 2019, H.R. 1952, Inter-Country Adoption Information Act with a Smith Amendment, H.R. 615, the Refugee Sanitation Facility Safety Act of 2019, H.R. 526, the Cambodia Democracy Act, H.R.S. 106, Denouncing Female Genital Mutilation, H.R. 1359, Digital Global Access Policy Act of 2019, H.R. 951, U.S.-Mexico Tourism Improvement Act, and H.R. 2116, the Global Fragility Act. I'll now recognize myself to speak on the en bloc measures. I strongly support all of these bipartisan bills and resolutions in this package. Because we have limited time and a lot of business to get to today, I'll keep my remarks brief. First, I was very pleased to work with Ranking Member McCall on H.R.S. 273 and H.R. 2002, two bipartisan measures to further strengthen the U.S.-Taiwan partnership. Tomorrow marks the 40th anniversary of the Taiwan Relations Act, and it's important for Congress to reaffirm our commitment to Taiwan and the implementation of that landmark legislation. Next, we have the Global Fragility Act, another bill that I introduced along with Mr. McCall. This legislation passed our committee and the House last Congress, and I'm pleased that we're considering it again today. It will help strengthen and coordinate our government's efforts to help countries become stronger and more stable, and thus make it harder for terrorists, criminals, and other violent groups to put down roots. I'm also happy to join with Mr. McCall on H.R. 1704, the Championing American Business Through Diplomacy Act, which prioritizes commercial diplomacy so the State Department can better support American businesses in the global market. When we think of the importance of diplomacy for American businesses, we must look at our southern border. Mexico is one of our largest trading partners, and the proximity between our two nations makes the U.S.-Mexico tourism industry an important economic driver. The U.S. tourism industry would suffer if President Trump follows through on his ill-advised desire to close the U.S.-Mexico border. The U.S.-Mexico Tourism Improvement Act, a common-sense bill introduced by Mr. Cuellar and Mr. McCall, would benefit both our countries. This legislation will increase exchange programs in a number of economic sectors and demonstrate the kind of mutually beneficial partnership Congress wants with Mexico. I'm also happy to support Mr. Yoho's Cambodia Democracy Act. This bill codifies existing sanctions to hold Cambodia's leaders accountable for their crackdowns on democracy and stripping the Cambodian people of their rights. We have two other strong measures on human rights before us today as well. H.R.S. 106, introduced by Ms. Frankel and Mr. Perry, rightly denounces female genital mutilation as an egregious violation of women's and girls' human rights. And Ms. Meng and Mr. Zeldin's Refugee Sanitation Facility Act will help provide women, girls, and other vulnerable populations with safe and secure access to sanitation facilities and refugee camps. We also have a number of other good bipartisan measures that our committee passed last Congress. First, the Intercountry Adoption Information Act creates more transparency in the international adoption process, so prospective parents are better informed about policy changes that could affect their adoptions. Next, the Rescuing Animals with Rewards Act, which embraces and enhances U.S. efforts to combat wildlife trafficking by authorizing rewards for information leading to the arrest or conviction of those engaged in the illicit wildlife trade. The Digital Global Access Policy Act, which passed the House last year, makes it a U.S. foreign policy priority to promote Internet access in the developing world. And finally, we have the Global Electoral Exchange Act, which also passed the House last Congress. This bill, introduced by Mr. Castro and Mr. Meadows, would establish a program at the State Department to exchange best practices for elections around the world. I'm pleased to support all of these bills, and I'd like to thank our members for their hard work. And now I'll recognize my friend, our ranking member, Mr. McCall of Texas, for any remarks he might have.